All right, so you guys sent us a doozy this time.
Yep.
This LAD Bible article about Trump's second-term promises.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a political thriller sequel that nobody
Oh.
asked for.
Yeah.
TikTok, Greenland, JFK files.
It's a lot.
We're going to need to deep dive into this to even begin to make sense of this.
Yeah, I think, what's really striking is how these promises touch on, like, almost every facet of American life.
Yeah.
Like from our phones to our borders to our history and our future. It's a
lot to unpack.
It's a lot. It's January 20th, 2025. The 78-year-old Trump is back in the White House.
Oh, wow.
As a Republican kicking off his second term with promises of a brand new day.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that actually look like based on these pledges?
Right.
We've got to figure that out.
Well, let's start with, I'm sure this is what, like 170 million Americans are most interested in TikTok?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the whole ban saga?
I do.
Back in the before times?
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this article, Trump is now all about striking a deal with TikTok to protect national security.
Oh.
He's even encouraging companies to keep the app running while he figures this executive order out.
Interesting. So it's a real, 180 from his previous stance, right?
Totally.
Because during his first term, he wanted nothing to do with TikTok.
Right.
He wanted it banned. He was very concerned about data privacy and Chinese government influence.
It's a huge security threat.
But now he's advocating for a deal.
Yeah.
So it suggests maybe a more pragmatic approach.
So is this a genuine, change of heart in terms of security, or is this a strategic power play? Is he realizing that banning TikTok is A, impossible, and B, alienating a huge part of the population?
Possibly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question. And this article doesn't give us the answers. But, looking back at Trump's negotiation style during his first term, particularly on trade deals,
Yeah.
There's a pattern of really aggressive tactics followed by a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible he's doing the same thing here.
Right.
Like using the threat of a ban as leverage to get some concessions from TikTok.
And what might those concessions look like? This article mentions protecting national security. What does that actually mean in the context of an app?
Right.
Are we talking about data access for U.S. authorities, content moderation policies?
Potentially, yeah.
Something else entirely?
I think, those are all crucial questions, and the devil will be in the details.
Yeah.
This situation raises concerns about government involvement in social media and the potential impact on free speech.
Absolutely.
So if the U.S. government starts dictating terms to TikTok,
Right.
could that set a precedent for other platforms like Facebook, Twitter,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Instagram? Yeah.
It's like that slippery slope.
Exactly.
It's never good.
Yeah,
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that.
for sure.
But speaking of protecting America, this article also dives into Trump's immigration plans,
Yeah.
which are bold,
Mhm.
to say the least.
Yeah.
He's vowing a massive deportation program, wants to reinstate the travel ban on several Muslim-majority countries.
Uh-huh.
He's using some pretty strong language, like
Yeah.
seal our border-infested countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that immigration is a central focus for him.
Yeah.
This was obviously a major part of his platform in 2016
Mm-hmm.
and still resonates with a segment of his base. But I think we have to consider how these policies might actually be implemented.
Yeah,
What the consequences could be for people,
of real people.
for families, for communities,
Because last time around with the travel ban, we saw the chaos, the legal challenges of families being separated,
Yeah,
refugees seeking asylum.
absolutely.
So how's he going to avoid that this time around?
Right.
And what about the economic impact of mass deportations?
Yeah.
Especially now with labor shortages in so many sectors.
Yeah, that's a good point. The article doesn't really address that directly, but we can look at his actions, his statements from before to get a sense of his approach.
Mhm.
He really emphasizes border security, reducing illegal immigration,
Right.
often using rhetoric that really dehumanizes immigrants,
Yeah,
stokes fear.
absolutely.
So it's likely that his second term will see a continuation of these hardline policies,
Right.
potentially with even stricter enforcement.
And, those measures are definitely going to spark intense debate legal challenges all over again.
Absolutely.
But before we get too bogged down in the present, let's rewind the clock a bit.
Okay.
Because Trump is promising to unlock some historical mysteries.
Oh, wow.
He's pledged to declassify documents related to the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and even MLK Jr.
This is going to be huge.
Yeah.
These assassinations are still shrouded in so much speculation, conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And releasing this info could potentially shed new light on these events.
It's like a time capsule to some of the most pivotal moments in American history.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if we uncover new details about who was involved, what the motives were, what really happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's hard to even fathom the potential for both, like, revelation and controversy, because he's framing it as a move toward government transparency and accountability.
Right.
But critics are going to say it's a distraction.
Oh, totally.
Or an attempt to exploit these tragedies for political gain.
Right. Or even just to like stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Just cause some chaos.
Right.
There's also concerns about the authenticity of the documents.
Well, for sure.
Like, could they be selectively edited or manipulated to fit a narrative?
Yeah. And what about the potential harm to national security or the privacy of the people involved?
Yeah, you can't overlook those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to approach any of this info with a critical eye. Consider the source, the context, potential biases.
Right.
Declassification doesn't necessarily equal truth or accuracy.
Okay, so we've got TikTok drama, immigration battles, historical mysteries. What else is on the agenda for this brand new day?
Well, get this. He wants to buy Greenland. Remember that.
I thought the Danish prime minister shut that down so hard.
Well, he's back.
Okay.
He's more determined than ever to make Greenland great again.
Oh, wow.
Promising to protect it from a vicious outside world.
What is the strategy here? Is this about resources like oil and minerals, strategic military advantage in the Arctic?
Maybe.
Or is it just a giant real estate deal in his mind?
It's a fascinating question, and one that I think geopolitical analysts are going to be dissecting for years to come.
Yeah.
Greenland has vast untapped resources, and its location in the Arctic is becoming increasingly important.
With climate change and everything.
Exactly. New shipping routes, the potential for exploration.
Right.
So his interest in acquiring Greenland could be driven by, wanting to secure access to those resources and project American power in the region.
It's like a real-life game of Risk.
It is.
With Trump wanting a prime piece of territory on the global board.
Yeah.
But he's not just talking about, armies and alliances. He wants to buy a country.
A whole country.
It's wild.
It is.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something closer to home.
Okay.
Women's rights and healthcare.
Right.
So his stance on abortion remains complex.
Yeah.
He's saying he won't push for a federal ban on abortion.
Okay.
Despite celebrating the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Wait.
However, he is offering free IVF treatment for those struggling to conceive.
Interesting.
It's like a mixed bag.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he's acknowledging that abortion is a sensitive issue.
A very divisive issue.
Yeah, he's not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole at a federal level.
Right.
But on the other hand, the free IVF treatment, that could be seen as a way to appeal to certain demographics.
Sure.
People who are struggling with infertility who might be swayed by those policies.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder that stances on women's rights are rarely black and white.
Yeah.
There are often, competing interests, conflicting ideologies, a complex interplay between personal beliefs and policy decisions. Yeah.
It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with one hand tied behind your back.
I like that analogy.
Speaking of complex challenges, let's talk about education.
Yeah.
Things are getting pretty heated there.
Oh.
This article talks about his plan to withhold funding from schools that teach critical race theory and transgender insanity, as he calls it.
Wow.
He's also going after those mask and vaccine mandates in schools.
Okay, so it seems like education is becoming a major battleground in the culture wars.
Yeah.
He's positioning himself as a defender of traditional values, a warrior against what he sees as liberal indoctrination.
Yeah.
But this approach raises serious questions about the role of government in education.
Absolutely.
The balance between parents' rights and academic freedom, and the potential consequences of restricting access to information and diverse perspectives.
It's like he's trying to turn back time to when schools were just about uniformity and conformity, not places where you could explore different ideas or challenge the status quo.
It's interesting because that emphasis on controlling the curriculum and limiting exposure to certain topics reflects a broader trend of trying to shape young minds.
Totally.
According to a very specific ideological agenda.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah. This raises concerns about censorship, the suppression of dissenting voices.
Right.
And, potentially creating an environment that stifles critical thinking and independent inquiry.
And in a world that is like more complex and interconnected by the day,
Right.
those skills, critical thinking, adaptability, the ability to engage with diverse perspectives, those are
Is
crucial.
absolutely essential.
So is he, by doing this, inadvertently harming students in the long run?
It's something to think about.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
definitely something to ponder.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we need to talk about the economy.
All right, the big E.
Trump has some pretty ambitious plans to make America affordable again.
That's the goal.
He's promising to end inflation,
Wow.
bring back economic prosperity, with a focus on opening up the oil industry while opposing those offshore wind farms.
Okay.
He wants lower interest rates, tax cuts, higher import taxes, all while cracking down on undocumented immigrants.
So it's a real mix of economic policies.
Right. It's like traditional Republican principles
Yeah.
with that populist rhetoric and a little dash of protectionism.
Yeah.
But will this approach actually work? And what's the cost going to be?
Those are the questions.
Big question.
Big questions.
Stay tuned, because in part 2, we will be dissecting those economic promises and what they mean for you.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that really jumps out from these promises is just how much they echo Trump's approach to governing during his first term.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for those of you who maybe need a refresher, can you connect the dots for us? What are some of the parallels you're seeing?
Well, take his strategy with TikTok, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
It's very reminiscent of how he handled trade negotiations with China.
Mm-hmm.
He'd start with that really aggressive posturing threats of tariffs,
Oh.
and then ultimately, reach a deal
Yeah.
that he could then present as a victory.
Right. So is he basically using TikTok as a bargaining chip,
Potentially.
create a sense of crisis, and then swoop in to save the day
Possibly.
with a deal that puts him in a strong position?
Yeah, it's a plausible interpretation, I think.
Uh-huh.
By pushing for that ban initially,
Right.
he created this sense of urgency, and then he also got support from those who were already wary of TikTok's security practices and ties to the Chinese government.
Right.
Now he pivots to a deal,
Right.
and he can present himself as the pragmatic leader
Yeah.
who's willing to negotiate in the best interests of the country.
But what about the substance of the deal itself? This article mentions protecting national security, but that's pretty vague.
Yeah, for sure.
What could that actually look like when we're talking about TikTok? Would it involve giving U.S. authorities access to user data,
Maybe.
restrictions on content moderation,
Possibly.
even like demanding changes to the algorithm?
Yeah, those are all important questions, and the answers have huge implications
Yeah.
for digital privacy, freedom of expression, the future of the internet,
Oh, totally.
If the U.S. starts dictating terms to a social media company like TikTok,
Right.
it could set a precedent for greater government control over these online platforms.
Yeah.
Not just here, but globally.
It's like opening Pandora's box.
Exactly.
Once you go down that road of government intervention.
Yeah, where does it end?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
But this emphasis on protecting America, it goes beyond the digital world, right?
Yeah.
We already talked about Trump's immigration policies, which I imagine are going to be just as contentious this time around.
Absolutely.
Really?
His rhetoric really hasn't changed.
Right.
It's all about framing immigration as this threat to American safety and prosperity. He's still using terms like infested countries, promising to seal the border,
Right.
implement mass deportations.
Dehumanize.
It is, and it's important to remember that these aren't just abstract policy debates.
Right.
These policies have very real consequences for people,
Yeah.
for families, for communities.
We saw that with the travel ban during his first term.
Absolutely.
Families were separated, lives were disrupted, there was widespread uncertainty and fear.
For sure. And beyond the human cost, there's the economic impact to consider.
Yeah.
Mass deportations could have a ripple effect on industries,
Right.
especially those that rely on immigrant labor.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget the cost of building walls and increasing border security.
It's a lot.
It's a complex issue with no easy solutions.
No.
But what's clear is that Trump's approach to immigration will probably be just as polarizing and controversial as it was before.
Okay, so we've got the TikTok saga immigration battles brewing.
Mm-hmm.
What other threads are you seeing woven through these promises?
One recurring theme is this appeal to nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, like this longing for a perceived better time in America. We see that in the slogan, Make America Affordable Again.
Right, which echoes his old Make America Great Again.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to tap into this, yearning for a simpler past.
Right.
A time when things were supposedly better, less complicated, more secure.
But is that even realistic? Like, can you really turn back time and recreate the past?
That's a good question. Maybe not, but from a political perspective,
Yeah.
appealing to nostalgia can be really powerful.
Right.
It allows a leader to tap into those emotional desires for stability and security.
Especially during uncertain times.
Exactly.
And maybe that nostalgia factor is also at play with his pledge to release those JFK files.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. It's like he's offering a peek into a historical mystery, a chance to uncover the truth about a key moment in American history.
Right. And it plays into that whole fascination with conspiracy theories
That's right.
and the desire to make sense of the past.
Yeah, it's a smart move, politically and strategically.
How so?
Well, by releasing these files, he can present himself as a champion of transparency, while simultaneously tapping into that public curiosity
Right.
about these mysteries.
It's like he's saying, I'm the one who's willing to open up the vault. Right. And show you what's really going on.
Exactly.
But there's always the risk of unintended consequences, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like, what if the files reveal information that damages national security?
Yeah.
Or tarnishes the reputation of some big name?
Absolutely.
What if they just don't satisfy the public's need for answers?
Right.
And just fuel more speculation and theories?
That's a real possibility, and it highlights that even actions with good intentions can have consequences you don't expect.
It's a reminder that governing is messy
It is.
and unpredictable.
Yeah. Even the most carefully crafted plans can go wrong.
Speaking of plans, let's talk about Trump's economic agenda,
Okay.
which is ambitious, to say the least.
Mhm.
He wants to end inflation, make America affordable, again, bring back jobs,
Okay.
all while cutting taxes and boosting domestic industries. How's he going to do all that?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
His economic approach seems to be a blend of traditional Republican ideas, like tax cuts and deregulation, combined with a populist focus on protectionist policies.
Like tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs, restrictions on immigration.
Right, so it's like he's trying to appeal to both Wall Street and Main Street,
It seems that way.
promising prosperity for businesses and workers alike.
Yeah, but some critics would say those policies contradict each other.
In what way?
Well, how can you cut taxes and increase spending without increasing the deficit?
Right.
And how can you restrict immigration while also dealing with labor shortages?
Yeah, those are good points. It remains to be seen how he'll balance those competing priorities.
It does.
One thing's for sure, his economic policies are going to have a big impact on your wallet, your job, the whole U.S. economy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got economic uncertainty, potential digital landmines, immigration battles brewing. Anything else we should be prepared for?
Well, there's one more element of Trump's playbook that I think is worth noting.
Okay, what's that?
His willingness to court controversy and stoke division.
Well, yeah, that's definitely part of his brand.
It is. From his attacks on the media to his rhetoric on social issues.
Right.
He seems to thrive on conflict and confrontation.
And we see this in some of his most divisive promises.
Absolutely, like withholding funding from schools that teach critical race theory.
Right.
Or his attacks on transgender rights.
That's like he's picking fights on purpose.
It seems that way.
On issues that are already so polarizing and just
Yeah.
deepening those divisions in American society.
And while that might appeal to his base and solidify his support among certain groups, it also alienates and antagonizes a large portion of the country.
It's a risky strategy.
It is high risk, high reward.
It's worked for him in the past, but can he really govern effectively in a second term
Right.
by continuing to sow discord and division?
It's a question that only time will answer.
I guess we'll see.
We will. But I think one thing is clear. Understanding his playbook, his motivations, his strategies. It's crucial for navigating his second term.
Right. Okay, so we've got a decent grasp on the what of his second term promises. But what about the why? What do these pledges tell us about where America is right now?
That's the big question.
Yeah, politically and socially in 2025.
Yeah.
We'll be tackling those big questions in part 3 of our deep dive.
All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Trump's second term promises. We've talked about the actual policies and pledges.
Right.
But now it's time to get into the why.
Okay.
What do these promises tell us about America in 2025?
Politically and socially.
Yeah, like what's the big picture here?
Well, that's the question that I keep coming back to as we've been going through this article.
Yeah.
You know, these promises aren't just like random policy ideas. They're all connected.
Yeah.
They reflect the anxieties, the divisions, the hopes of the American people,
like that whole debate about critical race theory in schools.
Yeah.
It's not just about history lessons, right?
Yeah.
No, it's about grappling with different versions of America's story,
Right.
different ideas about identity and belonging.
Yeah, what it even means to be American in 2025.
Exactly. It's a small example of a much bigger cultural clash that's happening across the country.
This clash between like traditional values and progressive ideals.
Yeah, between those who want to go back to a simpler time
Mm.
and those who want a more inclusive future.
And we see that same clash in his stance on transgender issues.
For sure.
His rhetoric really plays into those fears about gender roles, family structures,
Right.
and how fast society is changing.
It's a reminder that cultural anxieties often become political debates,
Mm-hmm.
and those debates can get really heated, as we've seen.
Yeah, it's like we're tiptoeing through a minefield of identity politics.
It feels that way sometimes.
One wrong step and everything explodes.
And these debates aren't going away.
No.
I think they'll probably intensify as demographics change, technology advances, and global power dynamics shift.
So where does that leave us? What can we even do as individuals to navigate this increasingly complex and divided world?
Well, I think the first step is to be informed.
Right.
That means going beyond the headlines and the sound bites,
Yeah.
seeking out different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
and being open to ideas that challenge our own assumptions.
It's easy to get trapped in those echo chambers online,
It is.
where you just see information that reinforces what you already believe.
Right. But
Yeah.
to really understand these issues, we have to break out of those echo chambers.
And be open to different viewpoints.
Exactly. Even if we disagree with them.
That takes a lot of effort, though.
It does.
Mhm.
It takes a willingness to listen, to empathize,
Mm-hmm.
to see the humanity in those who see things differently than we do.
It's not about agreeing with everyone,
No.
but it's about creating a space for respect and understanding, even when we disagree.
I think that's crucial.
At the end of the day, we're all Americans.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
Mm.
We have to find ways to bridge those gaps and work towards common goals.
I agree. And, this brings us back to TikTok, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because it offers some lessons about navigating this complex landscape.
Okay. I'm intrigued. How does a social media app tie into all of this?
Well, TikTok is a perfect example of how technology is shaping everything.
Right.
Our perceptions, our beliefs, how we talk about politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place where information spreads so quickly.
Yeah.
Trends go viral,
Right.
and narratives are constantly being created and recreated.
So it's a reminder that we can't just take everything we see at face value.
Exactly.
We have to be critical consumers of information.
No matter where it comes from.
Exactly. Question assumptions, evaluate evidence, consider different points of view before forming our own opinions.
And that applies to everything, not just social media.
Right. The news, what politicians are saying, even what we hear from our friends and family.
Exactly. We need to be thoughtful, engaged citizens
Mm-hmm.
who are actively shaping the narratives that define our world.
It's like we're all editors now, curating our own news feeds, filtering information, deciding which stories matter.
And that's a big responsibility.
It is.
The choices we make about what we consume and share have real consequences.
Yeah.
They shape how we see the world, what we believe,
Yeah.
and ultimately what we do.
So it's not enough to just passively consume information.
Right.
We have to be active participants in shaping the narratives and
Right.
creating a more informed public.
I think that's key, and that's why these conversations are so important.
Right.
These deep dives into complex issues,
Yeah.
they give us a space to wrestle with different ideas,
Hmm.
to challenge what we think we know,
Right.
and to develop a more nuanced understanding of the world.
And ultimately, that's what will help us navigate the challenges and the opportunities of this new era.
Absolutely. Whether it's Trump's second term or whatever comes next.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time, ready to tackle the next big issue.